So, Taz, what was the critical incident that caused you to become overwhelmed by your debt?
So as I had said earlier, I, stuck my head in the sand as far as the taxes go. I was self-employed, and obviously in the heydays, I was making good money. And so not filing taxes, CRA kind of just assesses you, right? So I had about 80,000 owing to Canada Revenue for my taxes, which I was working on slowly paying down. But that I had left the financial industry. I was now in the travel industry again, 100% commission. The money, the travel is great, but the money is really not there in the
Can I
travel
just step
industry.
back for a second? Because this is really important. There are
Yeah.
a lot of people who work in commission industries. There are a lot of people who will get a bonus and want the entire bonus to be paid out 100%. But then you have to pay that 50% or whatever it is to the tax man at the end. So I've always thought that if you get a bonus, take 50% of it, because that way you don't have to scramble. And it's the same thing when you're working in a commission industry. You've got to put money aside for the tax man.
Exactly. And that is what you would normally do in a business, or that's what we should be doing for sure. And I knew better. So let's be clear. I definitely knew better. I wasn't necessarily doing better. And as a travel agent, honestly, I'd already started draining my RSPs and my savings, and it's going to take time to build up. So here I was, new in the travel industry and driving to go do some training. And I was rear-ended at high speed. I saw him coming even before he hit me, and I remember screaming. It felt like something out of Fast and Furious. So lucky to even be alive. But as you can imagine, I had a severe concussion. I had lots of bruises. And so sitting up was difficult, let alone dealing with, insurance claims and doctor's offices and trying to work. I really could not work. Every time I would try to sit up and face the computer, I'd be nauseous. And, my brain fog was horrible. I couldn't remember simple things. Well, the bills still have to get paid. They don't, your utilities company, they don't really care. They care, but they don't, the bills have to get paid. So the bills start mounting up. And I'll never forget this one phone call. It was with, I think it was NMAX. And I'm sobbing. I was just so emotional because I'm like, what can I do? I'm not bringing in income. I'm using up all of my savings. I'm scraping it together, barely making payments. And I said, I might have to declare bankruptcy. And this is why I was crying, because I was like, oh my God, coming from the banking and mortgage world, we were always taught bankruptcy was like the devil. It's like the worst thing you can do. And so I'm crying to her saying, I might have to declare bankruptcy. And she says to me, if you can't pay this bill, you can't afford to go bankrupt. And I was just devastated, just devastated. And then I did eventually, go see a licensed insolvency trustee, and we went through all my numbers, and it did end up making sense for me to declare bankruptcy. But that was that pivotal point. And that's what, we will often see. And I think it's so easy to sit in our glass houses and judge. We hear quite often, and maybe I would have said this earlier, that people are just not managing their money, or they just don't budget, or they just don't have an insurance, or they don't have an emergency fund. But in reality, it's usually, there is this kind of a tipping point. There's usually a critical thing that will happen, a car accident, disability, critical illness, a divorce, or job loss, COVID would be another one that puts us over the edge. We're probably already living at or above our means. And sure, you could do better. We could all do better on that. But I think majority of Canadians live that way. And then there's something like that, that'll be that trigger, and that'll put us over from juggling and managing our debts to just being completely overwhelmed by our debt.
Well, health, anything emotional, triggers so much in us, whether it's a divorce, an accident, which you had all of them, actually. You had the trifecta, right? You just kept accumulating.
Exactly.
But it's difficult to deal with one, but when you're dealing with so many compounded things, you talked about the brain fog. I totally get it. It's hard to wrap your brain around certain things and get out unscathed.
Yes, absolutely. I couldn't remember, simple things. And, it was very devastating to my ego, having been in the finance industry that long and needing to see somebody about my debt.